Welcome to the Graduate Job Podcast, your home for weekly information and inspiration to help you get the graduate job of your dreams.
Hello and welcome to the Graduate Job Podcast with your host, James Curran. The Graduate Job Podcast is your home for all things related to helping you on your journey to find that amazing job. Each episode I bring together the best minds in the industry, speaking to leading authors, graduate recruiters and career coaches who bring decades of experience into a bite-sized weekly 30-minute-ish show. Put simply, this is a show I wish I had when I graduated. Hello and welcome to the show today. I'm very excited to have you with me for a very special episode, as following hot on the heels of my last episodes with listeners of the show, Jack and Callum, in episodes 115 and 116 respectively, I am today joined by fellow course alumni member Athavan, as he shares how he managed to get a graduate job with PwC. Athavan is just like you, a listener to the show who decided to sign up to the first launch of my course last September. And in today's episode, he shares his journey from graduating in 2019 through to bagging his dream graduate job with PwC. He shares his first-hand experience of going through each stage of the application process for a variety of finance and consulting companies, spilling the beans on what you can expect at each stage, from the online application, video interviews, numerical tests, through to the assessment centres. He shares what went well, mistakes he made, and what you need to do to stand out from the crowd, and why he recommends that you sign up to the How to Get a Graduate Job course. It's another inspiring episode. As we know, getting a graduate job is tough, but Athavan shows you how it is possible. And if he can do it, then you can do it too. Now, the links to the show notes today, including a full transcript that you can download, can be found over at graduatejobpodcast.com/Athavan, which is ATHAVAN. That's ATHAVAN. And make sure you listen to the end of the episode as I share the date for the relaunch of the How to Get a Graduate Job course, where it will be coming to you with hundreds of pounds of extra bonuses and extra coaching time with me. Now, if you're serious and want to turbocharge your job search for a graduate job and you want to get it first time around, then make sure you stick around to hear the details for that. Okay, without further ado, let's head on over to my chat with Athavan. I am very excited to welcome to the show today long-time listener and alumni of the How to Get a Graduate Job course. Welcome to the Graduate Job Podcast, Athavan.
Thank you very much for having me, James. It's great to be here.
Excellent. And today we're going to find out about your story of how you've gone about bagging a graduate job with one of the top graduate employers in the country. So before we get into the details for that, do you want to give listeners a brief introduction to yourself and where you studied?
Definitely, James. So I'm sure, as similar to many of the listeners right now, I'm a recent graduate. Graduated in 2019, so not too long ago. I studied material science and engineering, so the standard 3-year engineering course. And after the course, I was pretty clueless in terms of the career I wanted to pursue. So I started to apply to, just the run-of-the-mill standard entry-level jobs, since I was pretty demotivated to apply to graduate jobs, since I was always thinking I wasn't on par or on level to apply to a good graduate job. And I did start off by working within a entry-level finance job for around 6 months. And that's when I thought, if I can do this, why not try for a graduate job? And that's where my graduate job journey started.
Excellent. And I've got your application tracker open in front of me. And in the end, let's see just how many 27 graduate jobs you applied for over the last 6 months. So you've been very busy, and we'll explore some of those in more detail as we go along. So maybe just at the beginning then, why did you decide to join up and sign up for the How to Get a Graduate Job course?
Sure, I mean, that's definitely a good question. So I was looking at pretty much advice online in terms of getting a graduate job from a wide variety of sources. So from my university's website, careers services, even the career services hot phone line, and also just the generic jobs advice websites. And after going through 10 or 20 resources, I realized that most of them just pretty much say the same thing but in different ways. And that didn't really help in terms of trying to make me unique as a candidate for applying for graduate jobs. And that's when I came across your podcast, and I realized that the course you offered was a tailored approach in terms of the resources offered, and also the little seminars within the course which helped you bring out your own strength rather than rely on what strengths the other resources said. So, due to the uniqueness and also the fact that the services are tailored, I've thought your course was pretty unique in terms of what was offered. So I jumped on as soon as I could.
Yep, and you were one of the early members of the course last year. So let's then think about your applications. And so, how tailored were you in terms of what you wanted to study, what you wanted to apply to? Was it sort of a laser focus straight away? You knew you wanted to go for finance, or were you sort of umming and ahhing and thinking of more generic business type applications?
Yep.
Yep.
I believe my previous experience within finance, although short, so around 6 months, really helped me kind of see whether if I wanted a job in finance, which I definitely did. And so I tried to stick within the general sphere of finance, but I wasn't really choosy in terms of which aspect of finance I wanted to go. So whether I wanted to go into the industry side in finance leadership programs, or in the public side with audit and internal audit within the professional services firms. So I really tried to take a balanced approach in terms of applying for a variety of finance roles, peppered with different other roles such as facilities management, just to see what the application processes were like.
Yeah, and we'll talk in detail about some of the companies that you've applied to over this period, and we'll name and shame the ones who've been unbelievably slow to get back to you. So starting at the early stage then with the initial application, I'm just looking here. So of the 27 companies you applied to, you had 100% record of getting past the initial online application stage, which is brilliant. And that's testament to your CV, which looks really, really, really impressive. What did you do in this initial stage to make sure you got past you got past the first stage of everybody, which is, as I said, really impressive. The failure rate at this stage can be up to sort of 75% plus. So to get through every single one you applied to,
I started the course. You would have been surprised because the CV was awfully bad. It was pretty much not tailored for each company, but I believe the real secret for me getting past the stage was the draft CV you had in the initial stage of the course. So what I really tried to do was tailor each CV application or online application to what the company wanted, and I tried to use specific buzzwords from the website in terms of what the ATS tracker would pick up, so the application tracking system, which would lead to higher success rates. So I really tried to focus on tailoring my applications to the company, so that my culture and the company's culture were both really fitting. And I think that was the most key aspect, together with the draft CVs and also the example CVs you had offered in the course as well. So it was just a mixture of both, I would say.
Excellent. Oh, good. I'm glad they were useful. And yeah, I mean, you did exactly the right thing, right? As you said there, just where people tend to let themselves down is coming up with one CV, being lazy, and then just banging that same one off to all different employers. And if you're not tailoring it, if you're not making sure that the competencies they're looking for are in your CV and the requirements they're looking for are sort of nice and prominent, you are setting yourself up to fail. So yeah, you did brilliantly well there.
Thank you, James.
So then moving on to the next stage, the online testing phase of the process. So, you come from an engineering background, you're obviously you're applying for finance roles, so you're probably extremely numerate. How did you find this stage of the process? Did you find the numerical aspect quite easy, or was it something you still had to work out?
I would say generally the numerical questions weren't too hard, especially if you come from a STEM background. The main thing would be the time limit. So just trying to adjust your pace and your training to kind of beat the time limit for all the different tests. Of course, you had a few tests which weren't limited by time, such as HMRC's numerical questions in the civil service. But if you look at most private companies, their numerical test is pretty intense in terms of the time limit you had and how many questions you had to complete within the time limit to pass. So I would say that aspect of the online testing phase was pretty tough. And of course, that as cheesy as it sounds, the only way you'll get through is to practice, and just get your skills up to the high standard.
And how did you find the games-based tests? Because I know some of the Big Four firms that you applied to have the games-based assessments that we talk about on the show. I'll link to those in the show notes, which today you can find at graduatejobpodcast.com/Athavan, which is ATHAVAN. So yeah, so how did you find the games-based tests?
I found that my overall experience was pretty good in terms of I didn't see the time flying by when doing the assessment. So I basically downloaded the app on my iPad because I felt it was easier to handle rather than my phone. So you had to interact about, matching tiles, and you had to keep on popping balloons till they reach a certain level. So it didn't really feel like an assessment. Although I did try and keep in the back of my mind what I could do to improve my performance and what they were looking for. But it's really something you can't prepare for. So I would say it's just, going in there and trying your best, really. But it did really feel different in terms of how I could express my qualities in the assessment.
And again, looking at the tracker, so from the 27 companies you applied to, there was only 4 where you failed the online testing phase. So, great success there. Well, you did fail for some of them. Was that a bit of a shock? So, Johnson Matthey and Virgin Media. What else was, do you think of anything that you did specifically wrong with these?
That's a good question, actually. I would say it's just maybe it's just my mood, or maybe if I was tired on the day, that might have affected my performance on the day. So I would really say it just depends on how you're feeling as well. So it's really important to get refreshed, feeling on top of your ball for each time you do the test. So maybe if I'd done it in the evening, I would have been a bit more tired, and it would have been a bit more tough to do the assessments. So it might have been environmental, factors rather than ability. But I would say you can always practice more, as in I was only practicing about maybe once a day, but if I had done more, maybe I could have gone through the assessments, I would say.
Yep. And, just looking at the looking at the dates for some of these, so you probably were doing one a day around this phase. So they're coming thick and fast. So yeah, it is being fresh and just being at your best, whether that's in the morning or the afternoon or the evening, is just going to be different for everybody. So yeah, listeners, make sure that you know when with your circadian rhythm is going to be right for you, and just making sure that you're going to be performing at your best when you do them.
Precisely. And coffee, that really helps as well. So.
A good tip there. So then moving on to the video interview phase. So had you done any video interviews before this when you started applying for graduate jobs?
I would say I've done a phone interview actually way early in the year, so last year, and I hadn't really done video interviews before. And especially with the COVID situation, if anything, it accelerated the need to do video interviews. So it was really a steep learning curve for me.
Mm-hmm. And had you done any recorded video interviews, or was that just a completely new ballgame?
Recorded, completely new ballgame, I would say, because I was under the impression that if it was a video interview, it's going to be live, face-to-face with a representative from the company. Asking me questions, but no, it was definitely a new experience for me.
Yep. And so as part of the course, listeners, the course members we could do mock recorded video interviews, so where the tailored questions that they're going to face depending on the company, and the amount of time is similar to whether it's 2 minutes or 1 minute prep, and then again the amount of time that they're going to need to answer the questions changes per company. So I'd set all those up, and then we could go through the mock interview and look at them through that process.
I would say it definitely takes your performance to the next level, if that makes sense. Because however much I practice in front of, the mirror, going through my notes in terms of what I was going to, what the potential questions were and what my potential answers were, it doesn't really match having another person asking you the questions. And also the fact that you get a similar experience to what you would experience in the actual video interview. So when you were interviewing me, it basically just felt like the real thing. And I feel like that's the only way you really get to identify what mistakes you're making coming from a different person. And also to get used to the technology, I would say, which is the most important thing in terms of setting up your camera and making sure that your mic is okay. Because at the end of the day, successes in video interviews is a combination of both of these, I would say.
Yep. And if my memory serves me right, you invested in a webcam, didn't you? And just making sure that you had a decent quality webcam for the interviews.
Definitely. So I was actually listening to your podcast with I can't recall his name, but you were talking about the video interviews, and I think he published a book on them as well. And I just clicked on the link on the show notes and went on Amazon and just bought the webcam. And that turned out to be better than I expected.
And it shames me that I can't remember his name either. So, but listeners, check out the show notes, and I'll dig out the links to that video interview where you can explore in more detail what you need to do to impress in video interviews. So you're not alone there, Athavan, in forgetting his name there.
That's a relief.
So what tips would you give people for how they can perform in video interviews?
For video interviews, I would say for certain companies, I believe there's an algorithm which looks at how you present yourself and how you communicate the information. So I would say definitely try and not write the script down and kind of utter it out. So from personal experience, I was applying to Morrison's, the graduate scheme, and that was one of my first video interviews. And I kind of written down a set script for potential questions, and that approach didn't really go well because I couldn't really be flexible and adapt my question to the different questions that were asked on the actual video interview. But what really helped me was just to have a brief set of notes and keywords for generic questions. And so if there was a surprise question in the video interviews, it really helped me adapt my question and for a more flowing answer, you have a more flexible approach to video interviews, and also to come across professionally with hand gestures and to look at the camera directly.
That's great advice. And it's the word on the street is a higher view. When people use a higher view tool for video interviews, it's as you mentioned, sort of an algorithm that just takes into account your body language, your enthusiasm, the tone of voice. If you're wooden and don't move, or if you are using hand gestures and looking like you're genuinely alive. Listeners, and they'll always tell you which tool you're going to be using. So if you do get told that you're going to be on the higher view platform, that definitely something to think about is making sure that you are looking animated and that you're interested and excited in the role, which will make a big difference. But and also great advice there from Athavan. Great advice there from Athavan. Did you find this stage of the process one of the most difficult?
Yeah, I would say so. It was difficult in its own aspect, I would say, since it's the first time you really show your face to the company. So there was the pressure in terms of, expressing the most professional aspect, the professional side of yourself. So you really wanted to show the company that this was someone they wanted to put in front of clients or whoever. So I would say there was a slight pressure in terms of bringing the professionalism out. So that was probably the hardest aspect. On top of trying to match the cultures, so what the company were expecting in terms of competencies, and also how to match your previous experience with what they required.
And how did you, it's not just a standard answer, question response video interview, but they're more interactive in terms of having to do, almost like a mini case study as part of the answer. How did you find those?
I just remember that actually. So I believe the first few questions were pretty generic, so in terms of why the company and why the specific line of service. So that were questions you could pretty much answer. But I would say near the end of the video interview, there were a few case studies actually. So you're given a bit longer to attend this question, and you're also given a longer preparation time. So, for example, the question might be that this specific professional services firm is acquiring a technology company, and so the question may be, what kind of due diligence or what kind of research would you do to make sure that this merger or acquisition is successful? So it's pretty tough in terms of going from zero and trying to do your research in terms of gathering information and the specific information that the question required, and trying to form a structure in terms of how you present it back in terms of a video answer. So it's both those elements back there, and that was the toughest aspect, I would say, of those longer questions.
Yep, yeah, definitely. They are challenging, and if you aren't expecting them, then you can be on a hiding to nothing. If they come in completely out of the blue, if you're just only expecting competency questions and you suddenly get a question like that, then you can easily start to panic. So this is just looking at the dates here. So this is October, November time, where you were completing, and actually the end of September, completing a lot of these video interviews. And we were talking offline about who's been the slowest companies to go through. And you mentioned Network Rail. So sorry, Network Rail, but we're just sort of naming and shaming. You completed that on the 13th of October. And when did you hear back from Network Rail?
I've actually only heard back from them a couple of weeks ago. So I think we're recording this around early April. So it's quite a few months later that they replied to me saying they filled the spots. And I mean, to someone who really wanted the role, that must be really frustrating.
Oh, massively. I mean, so that's 5 months, right? Waiting 5 months to hear that
Exactly.
from one stage to the other, which is, that's not really acceptable. But anyone who is in that position, check 5 months to hear that
Exactly.
from one stage to the other, which is, that's not really acceptable. But anyone who is in that position, check out last episode 114, which where I talk about what to do if you're on the waiting list for graduate schemes, which I know is a sort of frustrating place to be. So how did you feel at this time? So it was sort of October, November time. You'd done a load of these applications, you'd done a load of the tests and the video interviews, and it was sort of quite slow going in terms of companies hearing back. How did you manage to keep your morale up?
Um, I would say that's actually another bit the course helped with, to be honest, because I kind of knew this going in that there would be the dip. I don't want to give too much information out there just to, in case someone gets demotivated. But when you do sign up for James's course, I think you go through the dip phase. But when you do sign up for James's course, I think you go through the dip phase in the beginning. So I was pretty surprised when I was first heard about it, about the dip, and but I was prepared in terms of what to expect. So I kept my morale up in terms of just by looking at different opportunities out there and by trying to focus on other things, really, even despite the lockdown. So other entertainments and keeping up with the world news, just try and distract myself from the application process, I would say.
Yeah, and yeah, as you said, it's one of the things that we cover in the first module of the How to Get a Graduate Job course is just the awareness that look, you will go through the dip at when you're applying for graduate jobs, right? You're doing great things, and then suddenly you hit this wall of either rejections or radio silence, and it can be really difficult to keep your morale up and keep going. But that's what you need to do. You need to stay positive. And if you're expecting this stage in the process, then it makes it easier to deal with it. So I'm glad that was useful. So you were getting then on to the assessment centre stage, but maybe before we jump into the assessment centre stage, as you were going through the application process, had your views on the companies that you wanted to work for crystallized? Had you sort of, formed more around whether you wanted to be professional services or you wanted to be sort of, finance in-house for a company? Had you got a definite leaning one way or the other, or were you just entirely waiting on seeing which companies came back as a positive?
Yep. So at first, I really had three categories in play in the HMRC and the civil service finance scheme. And as I was going through the application process, I really liked the regularity and also the clear-cut criteria that was available in both the public sector grad schemes and also the professional services ones. Because with industry, with the different companies, they just have totally different application processes. And I believe that the application process also kind of reflects the company and what it is like to work like within the company as well. So in the end, I would say I definitely got attracted by the professional services company, just in terms of the application process and also the culture. And I believe the culture really attracted me in the end as well. So that's what really drove me towards that side.
Excellent. And by this stage, one of the big four, who everybody will know, invited you along to an assessment centre. So do you maybe want to just talk us through what this was like? Because this would have been your first assessment centre that you went to, wasn't it?
Yep, that's right. So it was a bit manic actually. So this was the first week of December. So I actually had one assessment centre with one of the big four and a final interview with another big four within the same week. And it was just a bit crazy in terms of preparing for both of them. And but the good thing was that the generic information, so they were both the same service line. So that kind of research would benefit both schemes. But the particular research you had to do in terms of what the company were doing and also what was expected in terms of the culture, that I had to differentiate. So I would say that was the most difficult aspect.
Only me. Jumping in here to say, if you want to follow in Athavan's footsteps and get your dream graduate job, then sign up for the How to Get a Graduate Job course over at howtogetagraduatejob.com. It's got everything you need to succeed with 8 modules, 23 video tutorials, handouts galore, and weekly coaching calls to ensure you are on the right track. That's howtogetagraduatejob.com. Athavan swears by it, so make sure you check it out yourself. Okay, back to the show. And how did you feel on the day then? How were the nerves going into it? Were you cool as a cucumber, or were the nerves?
It is cool as cucumber, but when the camera's on, when the start button's there, the pressure kicks on. But I would say it's definitely about just trying to keep that nerves under and trying to focus on the performance. So trying to get through the different tasks actually. So I had to do a wide variety of tasks within the assessment center. And I would say it was also draining in terms of just having no breaks, just going through the whole assessments without any breaks. That was another tough aspect, I would say.
Yep. And walk us through the different tasks that you had to do then on the day. Which one came up first?
So I had to do the video interview first, actually, weirdly, because usually they reserve that for the end of the assessment center from what I was hearing. But I literally logged on my assessment center webcam.
Yep.
So and I had to do the video interview straight away. So that was a bit unexpected, but managed to get through that decently. There weren't any surprise questions, I would say. It was just a generic why this company, why this service line, what do you know about the industry, and all the other questions which would follow this. And then following this, I had to do a numerical based assessment. But the weird thing was, with this specific company, you had to manage your own time, so there wasn't a set base of exercises. So there were numerical questions, verbal questions, a group discussions which you had to attend as a meeting.
Yep.
So it almost felt as if I was working within the company. So reading through emails, I was working within the company. So reading through emails, there were a few inbox e-tray exercises as well. So I would say a key aspect of that was managing my time. So I kind of formed a rough timetable of what I was going to do. So I realized that I would be faster with numerical questions. So I tried to put, half an hour for that. And then I would take a bit longer with the essay-based questions. So I tried to allocate a bit more time, so an hour for that. So I tried to plan my time, just for 5 minutes before I started on going through the different tasks. So that was definitely a unique experience.
Oh, brilliant! And you completely did the right thing there, and taking that time at the beginning just to do the planning. Every part of your body's urging you just to start, and you're under time pressure. Let's doing, and B, you can just add that structure. So you did really, really well there.
Thank you, James.
So what came after the testing phase? And did you have any group exercises to do?
Yep. So I believe there was a set time for the group exercise. So after doing all of this testing phases, I had to pop onto, I believe it's a Google Meet a group exercise, and there were 3 to 4 other people, and we had to basically research about, I believe it's a company acquiring another business in Europe, But the weird aspect was that I had to do external research within the time. So that didn't really help in terms of the preparation I did before. But I would say what really helped me was just trying to talk to the different people within the group assessment and trying to form a relationship with them.
Yep.
And once you got through that initial, breaking the ice barrier, the conversation was a bit more flowing in terms of, reaching the solution rather than trying to get through the formalities.
Excellent. And I mean, on the course we did with the group members, we did a mock group exercise, and you performed really well in that. So I was confident that you'd do the same as well in the real life experience. How did you find the other people? Did you, as a group, did you all get on okay? Were the people who tried to were they louder than everyone else and tried to monopolize the decision making, or was it all nice and chilled and everybody sort of working together?
Yep. So
monopolize the decision making, or was it all nice and chilled and everybody sort of working together?
Yep. So I think definitely doing that mock group assessment helped me in terms of helping me identify what kind of group dynamic I would need to take on, so what kind of roles there were.
Yep.
And going in, I would say it was pretty okay for me, as in, obviously, if everyone was trying to get the point in, which made it harder for us to reach the solution or the objective of the group discussion. But from doing the mock assessment, I really identified what aspects I could play up to. For example, taking the role of a note keeper or a timekeeper rather, and also just to bring other people into the discussion if they were being particularly quiet. Since you're engaging all members of the group, which always adds on brownie points, I would say, at the end of the day, and makes you look good within a group assessment.
Definitely. And yeah, that's, you mentioned a couple of the key things there. And yeah, if you can, in a group exercise, I guarantee you there will be people who are quieter than others, whether it's due to they've got rubbish internet connection and they've got a slight lag, or they're just, quieter. If you can be the person who's demonstrating leadership, demonstrating group awareness by pausing the group, bringing these people in, giving them an opportunity to speak and add their content, then, as you said, that's going to be plenty of marks for you. So yeah, I'm sure you did that really well during the actual exercise.
Wow.
So as a group, did you manage to complete the task on time and as per expectations?
Definitely, I would say that's one thing. When we were doing that mock group assessment, we left it too close in terms of trying to reach a solution. So that point was really hammered onto me. So when I was doing the actual group assessment, 5 minutes before our deadline, I tried to bring together the idea as a group, so what our solution was, and everyone realized, oh yeah, we only had 5 minutes left. We had to conclude and bring together our points to identify one solution. So in that kind of aspect, I believe our group did pretty well.
Yep.
In terms of just trying to agree to find the best solution.
Excellent. And after the group exercise, were there any more tasks, or was that the end of the day?
So I actually had to do a kind of a feedback kind of task. So answer questions on how the day went and what I learned from the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe it was assessed. I may be wrong.
No,
but
everything's always assessed.
Yeah, so it's always, even with that kind of exercise, it always pays to put your best self forward in terms of just being professional about what you enjoyed the day and how you found the overall assessment procedure. So
that was the end of the assessment centre, and I'm sure you did amazingly. How long was it then that you found out either the yay or the nay?
I was actually pretty surprised. I was preparing myself to wait the Christmas holidays and then maybe get a result. But the company was pretty quick. They got the result back to me, or rather, I should say, a call back to me within 5 days.
Cool.
So definitely on the quick side.
What was the outcome?
It was definitely good news, as in, I believe it was someone from the recruitment team who called me and just offered me the job. And I was just, put me on a really good mood after that call.
I bet I was over the moon myself when you told me, so I can imagine how excited you would have been. And just before Christmas, so nice time you could go into the Christmas break. With an offer in your back pocket for one of the big four. So amazing work. What were your thoughts then on that? Was it cool? Got the job? That's it. Cancel everything else? Not bothered? Or because you were still in the process for some of the other big four companies as well, weren't you, at the time?
Yeah. I would say that this was ideally the job I did want to pursue. So I was less motivated doing the other assessment centers. So I've pretty much firmed that this was the career path I was going to take for the future, I would say.
Brilliant. And it's when you get the offer, it does help you crystallize whether this is a company that you want to work for. And as you said, right, it comes all the way through the process. If the company's dealing with you in a really friendly, professional, quick way, it leaves you with a nice warm glow, right? And you think, I could actually work here. But if you're taking 5 months to get back to each stage of the process, it's not filling you with the same pleasant feelings, is it? Or if they're just a bit arsey through the process. So it's you do know as you go through the process. Yeah, I can see myself working here or not.
No, definitely, it sets the culture, I would say, as well, because you get to have almost like a taste of the company and to see if they fit your own personality.
So you did. For one of the other big four, you got through to the final partner interview. Do you maybe just want to share with us your experiences of that and just how you found the whole process?
Definitely. That one was definitely way shorter than the full-on assessment center. It was just a 1 hour call with a manager of the office, and firstly, started off with just the generic run-of-the-mill questions. So why the company, why the specific line of service, and a few competency questions going through. But then near the end, they got more involved. So it was more case study based questions. So you were introduced to different case studies, and I think, got a few thinking times also, about 5 thinking time to come up with an answer and feedback to the manager in terms of what your solution would be. And I kind of got the glimpse that they weren't looking for the specific answers, but rather what your thought process was and how you organize your thinking to come up with the most logical answer. So I would say that was the most important aspect for answering those longer questions.
Definitely. And was it how was the manager? Was it quite informal, or were they very, sticking to a script and just going entirely by that?
I was pretty surprised, actually. They were really informal. So in terms of, they stuck to the script all the way, but they were informal in how they followed up with the questions. So if I had, for example, for the competency questions, if I, for example, talked about my experience with archery during university, they were pretty interested in terms of what I did, and they were pretty informal in that aspect as well, which was good, actually, because it put me in a sense of ease. Mm-hmm. So that was definitely a positive experience, I would say.
Excellent. And I'm sure you did really well in this, but you, as we talked about earlier, with the waiting list, you added to you passed it, but you added to the general dreaded waiting list, weren't you, for this specific company?
Exactly. Yeah. So I had to it was just the email. It wasn't a call or anything. So just informed me I was part of the waiting list.
Which, it pays to, at each stage of the process, try and go through them as quickly as possible. Get your application in as quickly as possible, up to the required standard, of course. They'll give you a week to do the online tests. Ideally, you've been practicing, so there's no need to wait for the week. If you're ready to go at day one, boom, get in on day one. And each day you can get in quicker, you'll just be ahead of so many other people, and you'll just get through the process so much quicker. And minimize the chances that you'll be on a waiting list for a job that might or might not ever appear. So Athavan, let's look back then reflectively over the process as a whole. What advice would you wish you could give yourself, in this, putting yourself in the pre-application phase? What advice would you wish you'd known?
I would say I would have told myself that applying to graduate schemes, it's a skill that you can develop, and to not feel demotivated. So when you're looking at this, way back in September, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and put off the applications, which I definitely did. And but I would say it's definitely about taking the next step, as you described, James, I believe, rather than looking at the process as a whole from September to when you do get the offer later on the year. So it definitely helps to break it down into smaller steps and trying to execute each smaller step and not to look at the long-term view. So it's easy to feel demotivated. It's easy to, put off the applications, but it pays to persevere and break it down and, do the small steps. So that's what I would say to myself if I was in my shoes back in September.
Excellent. No, that's brilliant advice. And it's daunting, right? It's scary. It's you're putting yourself out there for people you don't know to cast judgment on you and possibly reject you from jobs that you might or might not want to get in the first place. So Definitely. It's a scary process, but one step at a time, one small step at a time, and that's how you get through it. And you did amazingly, right? You worked hard, your CV was excellent, you practiced at the video interviews, you practiced at the tests, you got a graduate offer for one of the biggest employers in the country, an amazing role, amazing opportunities, and you start properly next week.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. But I'd also like to add on, James, that it wasn't only me. I think what another aspect which really helped was meeting the other graduates in the course as well, because it's always nice to go on someone with the journey, and it was good to go through other people on the graduate course, and that really helped me in terms of motivation. Even meeting up with them every week gave me something to look forward to as well. So I would say that's another aspect.
Yeah, no, I'm so pleased with the private Facebook group for the course members, and people sharing their success, and everybody just being really excited for each other, and sharing the questions they're facing, the challenges they're facing, the difficult times people were facing at different stages. It was great to see. So I'm glad that was you found benefit from that. And listeners, if you want to check out the course, then go to howtogetagraduatejob.com, and you will find details of how you can sign up, just like Athavan has done. So let's move on to our weekly staple questions then, Athavan. So I'm interested for your responses here today. So first question, what one book would you point listeners to that they should read today?
One book. That's definitely a hard question, James, but I would definitely say Striking Thoughts by Bruce Lee. Ooh. It's a pretty, I wouldn't say it's a popular book, but it's a definitely unique book, I would say. When you think of Bruce Lee, you think of him as a martial artist, but I would say he's a blend of both martial artist and philosopher. and it's pretty interesting to read his views on different aspects of life.
Amazing. I had no idea that Bruce Lee had written a book, so I will check that one out myself. That sounds that's fascinating. And yeah, listeners, check it out in the show notes at graduatejobpodcast.com/Athavan, which is ATHAVAN. So Athavan, next question: what one website or internet resource would you point listeners towards?
I would say one website I found really interesting was 1000yearsofcareersadvice.com. So I found this pretty late actually, but if I would have found this earlier, especially, I think they have a book as well. It shows you what kind of career advice that different people from different sectors give, and that was pretty interesting to read. And James, is it alright if I can break the rules slightly and suggest another website?
Of course you can.
So it's not really a website, it's just Google, but it's the news search function. So whenever you are trying to gather information about it, just type the company's name on Google and go onto the news section rather than the web search, and it gives you a whole list of news articles which you can gather information from.
That is a good one. And also, just building on that one, is you can set up a Google News alert. So if your company in question, you can set up an alert with Google, so they will send you an email every day when that specific company or specific terms exactly that you type in come up. Then that will they'll send you an email for that. So check that one out, and I'll link to that in the show notes. And Athavan, were you aware that 1,000 Years of Career Advice is a cracking book and a great website? And did you know that I had Paul on the show?
I didn't, James, no.
Well, there you go. So episode 73, listeners, 1,000 Years of Career Advice with Paul Murphy. So he chatted to 100 people, 1,000 Years of Career Advice with Paul Murphy. So he chatted to 100 people 10 years out of university, and spoke to them all and got their career advice for what they would tell their younger selves, sort of, and what they've learnt from over the course of the 10 years. But yeah, great resource, and top tip there, Athavan. So thank you for that one.
Awesome, no problem.
And you need to
I'll be checking that one myself. Yeah.
And final question today: what one tip would you give listeners that they can implement today to help them on their job search?
I was definitely reflecting back to what I said before. Try and break it down. So whatever problem you're having, whether it's with your graduate job search or whatever it is, to try and break it down into smaller tasks which you can accomplish, or even in the form of bullet points. It really helps you kind of put into perspective what you need to do. So that's one tip I would give.
Excellent. Athavan, thank you so much for appearing on the Graduate Job Podcast, and good luck and all the best with your amazing upcoming career with one of the biggest companies in the country and one of the Big Four.
Awesome, James. Thank you very much for having me. I definitely enjoyed my time.
There you go. Many thanks again to Athavan for sharing his insight and knowledge today of going through all of those graduate job applications. And all the best to you, mate, at your career with PwC. You're a star, and I've got no doubt that you're going to do really, really well. So, another successful and satisfied member of the How to Get a Graduate Job course. So we had Jack back in episode 115, Callum last week in episode 116, and Athavan here today in episode 117. It worked for them, and it will work for you. I'll be relaunching the course with some brilliant special bonuses on the 1st of August. So put that date in your diary. That is the 1st of August. Put a note on your phone, set yourself a reminder, and make sure that you won't be missing out on the very special offer that will be available for a short time with lots of extra goodies, including one-on-one coaching sessions with me. In the meantime, make sure you go to howtogetagraduatejob.com/5 steps. That's the number 5 and then steps, as that will take you to my free download where I share the 5 steps that you must take before applying for graduate jobs. If you sign up for that, I'll then be able to keep in touch with you and let you know what you need to do to sign up for my course when it goes on sale, so you can get it with all of those hundreds of pounds of free extras. So head on over to Hope You Use It and apply it. See you next week.